Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. You stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome to the Bryan Municipal Utilities Board meeting for August 20th. John, would you care to do the roll call, please?
I will. Karen Ford.
Present.
Annette Schreiner.
Here.
Jim Salsbury.
Yes.
Dick Long.
Present.
And Bob Eyre.
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the August 6th, 2024 meeting. You've been presented with a copy of the minutes. Any corrections or changes? If none, I will accept a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Bob.
Yes.
Dick.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Annette. Yes. And Jim.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is a hearing for public concerns. Seeing none. Next up on the agenda is the clerk treasurer's report.
Like we do every month, the board has received the financial statements and bank reconciliation and various other reports for the month ended July 31st. And I would entertain any questions you might have, or any of you are, of course, free to call me anytime if questions come up.
All right, seeing that the council passed, made a motion to approve. Next up is the board's motion.
I will make a motion that we accept this July 31st, 2024 Clerk Treasurer's Report.
I'll second.
Annette.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Dick.
Yes.
And Bob.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is AMP's presentation and update on energy markets and power supply from Mike Migliore. Gary, would you like to?
Just going to turn it
Proceed.
over to Mike.
Thank you. So I'm Mike Migliore from AMP, and here to mostly update you just on where your power supply comes from, what that makes up the power cost, what the future looks like for your cost, and then talk about one new supply that we're recommending to put in place to place an expiring contract at the end of this year. First thing that we just look at is how much the city is using, and you see the white is our forecast for this year. So with the bottom left, 182,000 megawatt hours, which you multiply that by 1,000, that's 182 million kilowatt hours. And then you'll notice the shape. We use more in the summer months, and then a little less in the spring, and then even the winter. You'll notice red line, red is a little lower than our forecast this year. So starting out the winter was a little mild, and then July was about normal, so about last year. And then you look at June, we had a real mild June last year, so that's that black square versus this year. So we had a little increase there. So overall, running a little bit below forecast. So we're still probably end up around that 180,000 megawatt hours. You can sort of keep that number in mind when we look at some of the different supplies, how much supply we get from each resource. And we look at our peak load. So this is the maximum hourly usage of the city. And this year we had a peak back in June, so June 19th, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we hit 36.64 megawatts, which would be 36,000 kW there. And been running about the same. 2022, you can see we had a little hotter June day, so we were up to 38 megawatts. This just gives you a little historical look there. So you see that city's loads have been decreasing slightly as we've gone over the last 20 years there. And I guess most of the electric industry has been fairly flat, to falling. We've had some mild weather the last few years, so that's contributed a little bit to our drop off there. But, we've had a little between energy efficiency and just some customers dropping off that led to the slight decline in usage over the years. So we're going to talk about our power cost and what makes up basically. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your energy resources, where all the power is coming from. That makes up about 70% of our cost. And then transmission, you guys are, it's always a little unique in that you're laying inside the Toledo Edison service territory, but you have the 138 kV, 138,000 line that connects you to AEP. So really we're paying AEP to use their transmission system to deliver the power to the city. And then installed capacity is, that's making sure, so PJM, we'll talk about them a little while, but they run the grid and they have to keep the lights on, so they have to make sure there's enough generation out there, when the load gets high or when there's a number of outages. So they contract with generators to be on call during emergencies to operate, so they pay those generators, and that price goes up and down. They call that installed capacity, and then that cost, or the price they pay to the generators gets passed on to the customers. So that makes up, those two make up about 15% of your bill, each of those there. So first we're going to look at your power resources, and this is a nice colorful graph, which is pretty good. I like to think of our power supply planning, now that I'm getting some gray hair and getting close to retirement, as your retirement portfolio. You don't want to go and say, yeah, I got 90% of my portfolio in Tesla stock. One day you're looking good, one day you're looking bad, versus you want to have a nice diverse portfolio, so when things go up or down, you're not fully affected one way or another. So in that case, we built a good portfolio over the years for the city of Bryan. You'll notice most of the stuff on the right-hand bottom corner between NIPA and Greenup, those are all hydro resources. So between that and then at the top, we got your own Auglaize Hydro and then Bryan Solar. So about 20 to 25% of your power comes from renewable resources. And that number is going to vary each year based on what your load is and then what the actual production of all those hydro resources throughout the year. And then the top right-hand corner, we have what we call a remainder requirement. So we contracted with BP, the same gas station that you get your gas from, and we actually bought that power back in 2015. So for the last 7 years, they said whatever you guys need on top of your existing resources, we'll supply that at a fixed rate. So unfortunately, that contract's coming to a close here at the end of 2024, and the market has gone up a little bit since we bought that almost 10 years ago there. So when you look at the next piece of pie, 2025, almost looks exactly the same, but now that blue top right-hand corner is replaced by the market rather than BP. So that's what we're going to talk about, filling that in a little bit as we go forward here. So we'll talk, as we go through your resources, look, you can see Prairie State is the biggest resource we have, 33% or so. So Prairie State is a coal-fired power plant. It's over in southern Illinois, and AMP started building that, in 2008 or so. So we have we're actually a co-owner with a number of other public power agencies in Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri. So we're the biggest donor. We own 23% of the 1582. So AMP owns 368 megawatts. And we went out. So the way we do our projects, we finance those. We issue bonds. And then we have contracts with the member participants to pay for that power through, in this case, the debt goes through 2043. So if you look at your books, you have a contract rather than a debt, and AMP holds the debt on our books there. So Bryan is contracted for 7.5 megawatts or 7,500 kW, which is 2% of AMP's ownership there. So Prairie State holds a couple of advantages. It's one of the few mine mount power plants in the country. So if you look at the bottom, all the coal is mined, right at the plant, just to the right of the picture there. Comes out of the mine at the bottom, and it's conveyed right across the street. So we've actually already paid for all the coal, and we don't have to worry about transportation interruption or transportation cost changes. So really, it's one of the lowest cost power plants in the country. So it runs pretty much flat out, 24 hours a day. The downside of owning a coal plant, in today's world is between the Illinois EPA and the US EPA, they all, are looking to shut down coal. So it's a continual battle between both of those to keep that plant online through the 2043 period there. So it's also one of the cleanest coal plants in the country, but you still have the carbon dioxide emissions that you have to battle with there. So the hope is maybe between now and 2043, somebody will come up with a way to capture that carbon. But at the present time, we're just running, and it is a clean coal plant. So the rate of that is about 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour, $65 a megawatt hour. About the average for the market there. Then we have Fremont. So this is AFAC, which stands for AMP Fremont Energy Center. So that's over in Fremont, Ohio, and so that's a natural gas, what we call a combined cycle plant. So the way a combined cycle works, if you look at the diagram, we got 2 gas turbines. So those burn natural gas just like your power plant. But in this case, rather than just the exhaust going to the atmosphere, cleaned up before it gets to the atmosphere, but we capture that exhaust gas, then we run it through a boiler. So now it looks like a coal plant. So we use that instead of burning coal, we just use this hot exhaust gas, boil water, and then that steam runs a third turbine. So that's where the combined cycle. So it becomes a really efficient type of generator. That's what most of the new generators in the country are nowadays, is natural gas combined cycle. So that's 675 megawatts. Also came online in 2012. Once again, AMP owns it, and Bryan has a contract for 6.968 megawatts, and that goes through 2041. So with the cost of natural gas, getting pretty cheap nowadays, that plant's coming in about 4 cents or $40 a megawatt hour. And so the difference between Fremont and Prairie State is, Prairie State runs about 24 hours a day. It's a coal plant, so you don't really want to shut that down, and it doesn't start up, too quickly. Versus Fremont's design that it can shut down and come back online in about 4 hours. So, it's designed what we call more of an intermediate, so it can run, Monday through Friday during business hours, shut down overnight if it needs to, and shut down over the weekend. So like tonight, with being so cool overnight, nobody's using any air conditioning, so the load's really down. So PJM, who runs the grid, say, AMP, we don't need your Fremont power, from midnight till 6 a.m. So then we're going to start back up at 6 a.m. Versus other times when it's real cold or real hot overnight, and we'll run 24 hours a day. So each day, the grid operator makes that decision whether somebody else is cheaper or cheaper than the other options there. Versus Prairie State being the cheapest, it pretty much, as I mentioned, just is running all the time. So we have a number of hydro plants. So you see the location. We have 6 different hydro plants that AMP has constructed over the years. Mostly Belleville being at the top. That came online in 1999. Green up at the bottom there, that actually was built in 1982 by the city of Hamilton. Then AMP became the owner in 2016. The other 4 plants, Willow Island, Belleville, Hamilton, Smithland, came online in 2016. And it's a little different than all the ladies here. So if you notice the picture, the dams on the Ohio River were constructed in the 1960s or so, mostly for navigation. So they want to keep the river at an adequate level that the barges can get up and down the river versus, before that you can see pictures where people were able to actually walk across the Ohio River, where it was dry there. So that with the dams being there, then AMP went in, and you can see in this case we built all of our power plants are next to the dams. So it's not like Ogleys where it's inside the dam there. So in normal conditions, all the dam gates are closed and all the water then flows through our hydro plant. And so as I mentioned, the output varies each year. So when we have a situation where we're like now where we're low on water, so we have reduced output. And then the other times we lose output is towards the winter and spring when we have too much water and the river gets flooded. We don't have the heads, we don't have the vertical drop. So those are the 2 things. So we operate about 2/3 of the hours, throughout the year on average. So 5 hydro projects that Bryan's involved in. So the first one is Omega JV5. So JV is a joint venture. And so in this case, back when AMP built that in 1999, we did not have the ability to issue tax-exempt financing like we do now. So we formed a joint venture among 42 of the participants that wanted to get in the project. So Bryan's an actual 2.18% owner of that project. So the debt is on your books. The good news is that debt's going to be completed in 2029. So near the end of our 30-year term there. Then we'll start at the other side. AMP Hydro is made up of 3 plants, Willow Island, Hamilton, Smithland. So that's 208 megawatts. Bryan contracted for 1.8, so that goes through 2049. Meldal is a single plant project, so that's the largest hydro plant on the river, and similar situation here, debt goes through 2049. Bryan has 1.3 megawatts, and then Greenup, as I mentioned, it was goes through 2045 debt, and same thing, Bryan owns or has a contract 0.923. Then we move over to NYPA. So NYPA stands for New York Power Authority, and so that's actually a power purchase agreement. So we buy that power from New York. That was built in 1960 or so, and kind of gives you an idea. Everybody wants to know, how long does the hydro plant last? So that, plant's been operating for almost 60 years, still going strong. So most of these other hydro plants expect to operate, 80 to 100 years or so. So once all the debt's paid off, your grandkids will be happy that we invested in these there. So all that's taken together, our hydro costs are about $80 a megawatt hour there. Then two projects that AMP puts in the portfolio and models. So we have the Bryan solar project there, which is now owned by the city. So that's 1.8 megawatts, and that produces, you can see, about 2,600 megawatt hours per year there. Then we have the Auglaize hydro plant, which is 4.1 megawatts, and you can see that produces about, give or take 9,000 megawatt hours per year. So both of those, we don't model any of your labor or anything when we just look at your overall power cost, but that does, factor into your rates that you charge the customers. Okay, so then the last piece that I mentioned is the BP, what we call remainder requirements. So whatever remains of your load on top of your resources, they supply that at a fixed rate of $36.75. So that's 3.6 cents. And I mentioned we bought that all the way back in 2015. So then this graph on the bottom is important because you can see what power costs have done here. So I don't know, it used to be red, look at what's green up there, but the bottom is natural gas prices, and then the blue is power costs there. So a little history here. So back in the 2000s, that's when all our natural gas was coming from the Gulf of Mexico. It was going to run out in 10 years. The economy was booming. Everybody predicted, gas, oil, and power prices were going to keep going up. So if you look at that black dotted line, that's what everybody was looking at when we started building these hydro plants in Fremont, Prairie State. Because back then we were buying almost all of our power from the market. So then we hit the recession, so all the need for all those commodities dropped off, so that took prices down with it. And then we started finding all the shale gas in the 2010s, and so that we saw a continued drop in gas prices. And since most of the power nowadays is generated by natural gas, natural power prices basically follow natural gas prices. And then we hit the end of 2021. First thing, we came out of COVID, we discovered that a lot of the coal mines are shut down, a lot of railroads that changed their strategy and started delivering other commodities that weren't delivering coal, and a lot of coal plants shut down. So all of a sudden we needed a lot of power in the summer, and we had to burn more natural gas. So that was the first cause of the price increase. Then we had the Russia-Ukraine war. So Europe tried to get off the Russian gas, and one place they turned was to America to start importing our gas. So now we're exporting as much as possible through LNG, which is liquefied natural gas. So all the terminals that are down in Louisiana and Texas, those are all running at full load, and we're exporting as much as possible. So that caused that big spike. And we got lucky in the natural gas world, anyway, if you're a buyer, is the last 2 years we've had really mild winters, not only in the U.S. but in Europe. And so that cut back on their gas usage, and that allowed them to store gas, for the 2024 and then going into the 2025. We have enough good amount of gas in storage, but as we look into the future, may not always be the case that we're going to be able to catch up in the winter, as well as everybody's building a lot of more LNG terminals. We're trying to export as much as possible, so the amount of export of natural gas is expected to increase as we move forward with these terminals coming online. So we have a little bit of reprieve as they're being built, but as we get to 25, 26, 27, they're expected to double the amount of export capability we have, which would be more of our natural gas going overseas, causing expected price increases there. And you can see that even though natural gas prices have dropped, we haven't seen quite the drop in power prices because we're a little shorter than we used to with the amount of retirements that we've seen. Coal plants mostly, even some natural gas plants, and we haven't been able to catch up with solar and wind, which is pretty much the only thing that everybody's building right now. So as we go forward, we're not able to get that $36.75 power rate, which is expiring there. So now we're trying to see what our options are for the future. And so we've been negotiating with a few different entities. Mostly it's the renewable power. So Blue Creek Wind is what we're recommending for some of your replacement. So that's over in Vandenberg, Ohio, to the west here. And so we were recommending 3 megawatts of Blue Creek. So that will start this year. That'd be a 5-year contract at a fixed price of $56 a megawatt hour. But the two things that come with Blue Creek is you get the RECs, renewable energy credits. And so normally we've been selling those. Those are worth about $3 a megawatt hour. But then we also get the installed capacity. So we talked about PJM paying generators for being back up to the grid. Well, they actually consider wind, about 35% of your wind they assume is going to be online, especially during the winter months when they've had their recent problems. So that's worth about $13 a megawatt hour. So we get the net price of Blue Creek's down to about $40 a megawatt hour, so cheaper than the market right now. So that's why we're recommending that as our current resource in 2025. And then we're also working on some solar. Two directions there. One is putting more solar inside the cities, and then also looking at some larger solar facilities, that are connected directly to the grid. If they ever, can get through the interconnection process and start getting built, and we were recommending 4.7 megawatts of future solar for Bryan there, but we don't have a project for that right now.
Mike,
Yes.
can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, recommended purchases. So how does that work? I mean, you're going to go to Blue Creek and say you're going to commit to buying 5% of what they can produce?
Yeah. So we've negotiated a contract with them for that $56, and they said, okay, you go out to it's a 300 megawatt facility, and so they say you go out to your members and whoever wants to sign up, as long as it's not more than 300 megawatts, we'll sell that to you for that 5 years. And then say if we get 40% of, we'll call it 50%. We get 150 megawatts members sign up. So then, each hour or whatever it puts out, we get 50% of that output.
So evidently, I'm going to say they have contracts coming on and coming off all the time in order for us to be able to buy in on that.
Yeah, it's sort of good timing for us. They have a couple contracts that are ending at the end of this year. So we actually were buying. Well, we were one of the contracts that are dropping off. We were buying a 10-year deal through June of 2022, and that expired. And at that point, we didn't really need any more power, so we haven't bought it for the last 2 years. But it'd be the exact same project and contracts, just a little higher, about the same price actually, starting up again in 2025.
So if they didn't have any contracts open, you wouldn't even be considering them?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So, we've talked to a number of different, wind projects, trying to find the best price, the best location, as well as, some solar projects. And we've actually been talking to Avangrid, is the owner of the Blue Creek. And so they're trying to build a solar facility around the wind turbines, but they've been, sidelined. Or the big hold up in the industry right now is getting a connection to the grid. So it takes about 3 years for PJM to study it, make sure all the lines can handle that. And so there's a big backlog of everybody waiting to get through that interconnection study. So and then when COVID hit and then interest rates took off, and then we got supply chain issues. So all the solar projects have been delayed. So the Blue Creek solar project really hasn't come to fruition yet. So that's as I mentioned, that 4.7 megawatts future solar. That's one of the options that we're looking at.
Is that the one in Payne, Ohio?
No, this one's just down in over in Vandenberg as well. But there's so many solar projects being kicked around or come online. And
There's a billion of them through from Balding all the way down.
Well, I know they're building a big one outside of Payne. I
Okay.
didn't know if that was one that you were, if
No,
that
that's
was.
not the one we're talking about, but we have been talking to a few other people with and some of the data centers that you hear about, they seem to be snapping up all the new renewable projects pretty quickly there, so that's sort of the cause of the prices going up, because there's a little more competition than there used to be with all these, before all these data centers came around.
I had read recently, though, that the wind turbines are not all that profitable, that over the course of their lifespan, they barely break even. So is that really, are we looking at this because that's the only option for us to get in on something renewable? Or is there another reason we want to go with solar? I'm sorry, wind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right now, I guess it's the best price-wise. I guess, Blue Creek being built more than 10 years ago, they seem to be able to get past that profitability stage there, so they seem to be doing okay. And
They're the bigger
they got a good
turbines,
track
too.
record there versus some of the other new projects. They keep moving the goal on us. They say it's going to be $45, then they come back and say, well, interest rates are up, so now it's 55. So and then it's gonna get built at 25. Now it's gonna get built at 26. So Blue Creek's got a good price and a good track record, and it's already built. So we sort of decided that was the best thing to approach for 2025 there.
Okay.
Can I follow up with a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Looking at Bryan Municipal and the cost that we receive from the PGM allocation costs to the capacity charges and things
Yeah.
like that. Looking forward, we're going to see a power demand increase significantly with new battery conductors, data centers, AI. The grid right now is not in a position to accommodate all that. So therefore, PGM is going to have to build incremental capacity. How do we protect ourselves from not having to be eating that cost? Because economic development projects here, we can't provide that type of level of service.
Yeah, I guess we got two things going on. Next, I guess if you look at this slide here, you see that sort of the pie chart flattened out, but notice we have a good amount of our power already in place. So on the energy side, we're pretty well protected, and having the power plant. Actually, Bryan is one of the few AMP members that has enough capability of their own generation. They can supply that installed capacity that everybody else has to pay for. Yeah. So Bryan's pretty well situated compared to most entities, whether it's a municipal or just a regular customer out there. And the fact that we have a lot of our energy supply locked up, through these contracts I just mentioned, as well as then we have the power plant.
So are you saying that on a fixed price basis, it might be beneficial for us to lock into before all this incremental capacity has to be created to meet this massive electric forecasted load? Because like I said before, Bryan's not in a position for economic development to serve these type of customers.
Right.
But yet we'll bear the cost because of the fact that PGM has to build capacity to do that. So those costs will be allocated to us, and we're not going to benefit.
Right. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons we're want to lock in this Blue Creek, because it's net below market, so that gives us a little more energy, as well as then I guess you'll see then what the value of the power plant is. So keeping the power plant in good shape definitely makes sense, so we don't have to pay for incremental new generation that comes online to supply the new data centers. You're already taking care of your own load in Bryan with the power plant mostly, as well as then Fremont and Prairie State are also considered resources that PGM pays for.
My biggest concern is that we're going to subsidize PGM and not get the economic benefit.
I guess everybody else is going to see the bear running those higher cost tubes. Well, I wouldn't say that Bryan is actually going to subsidize the new load versus anybody else.
But those costs will be passed through the capacity cost.
Yeah, right.
And we're not going to see the economic benefit because we don't have a system that can supply economic electric for that. So therefore, the future, it's going to be a challenge. And how do we protect our customers with a portfolio so that we're not caught in that?
Yeah, right. That's the strategy here. You can see that, if you look at all the resources, starting with Prairie State at the bottom, then the blues are all the hydros, the red is Fremont, then we have the Auglaize and solar are the two squares and the red checkers, and then the blue diamonds, that would be the Blue Creek wind. So it's a relatively small amount, but it adds to that your portfolio, and then the yellow checkers would be a solar, the 4.7 megawatts of solar. So we do like to leave a little bit of our power on the market. One is, as we look at this next graph, you see, if we get to the top of your load, you see once we get above, 25 megawatts or even 20, that load doesn't show up very often. So we don't want to contract for 100% of our power, for different resources, but we don't, a lot of times we don't need that. So we try to leave about 10% of our power on the market. And then we have a power pool that we call the OMEG pool, which stands for Ohio Municipal Energy Group. And so that's, Bryan, Wapakoneta, I can't remember who. Yeah, like Sycamore and all those. Bryan and Wapakoneta being big, but those, we grow together as a group, and then we say, okay, Bryan and Wapakoneta need, more power in the summer, so we'll go out on a short-term basis, buy that power to lock it up so you're not exposed in 2025. So, similar to your portfolio, we have a number of long-term investments, with Port, Prairie State and Fremont and the hydros, but we also, power costs do go down, and so we want to be able to take advantage of that, a small amount of our portfolio as well, so we leave that last 10% in the market there. So this gives you an idea of what your, how your load looks. So if you look at the bottom, solid blue about 10 megawatts or so that means the city's load is always using about 10 megawatts. And that's where we want a base load resource, something that runs 24 hours a day, which is the Prairie State and the hydros. And then Blue Creek, when it's running, it's on average, it runs about 24 hours a day, so that adds to that black line there. And then Fremont, as I mentioned, it's designed that it could run and shut down, on the weekends, so that's where all the white spaces between the blue are most of your weekend load there. So Fremont, covers that part of it, and then the solar on top of that would be the yellow, and then the part on top of the yellow is the market, but you guys have the advantage that we have the power plant. So if the market gets expensive, we can turn on the power plant. Most of the time, the market's cheaper than running the power plant, so we're just buying that off the market. But then, last defense on that is, as I mentioned, we go out as a group with the OMEG group and buy some monthly or seasonal power, to cover the extra load that we see typically, mostly in the summer there. So overall, I guess we feel like we have a good amount of your portfolio protected, and the ability to take advantage of some of the times when either the low's down, like today when it's 70 degrees out in August, or other times when prices get cheap if we have a mild summer or a mild winter, and we see downturn in prices for a while there. Any other thing don't like to talk about, but we do have a number of industrial customers, so if they have a slowdown or two, we don't want to guarantee that we're going to use 182,000 megawatt hours every year, so we want to leave a little bit, in the short term to account for that possibility as well there. All right, any energy questions? So, yes, Dave.
Just one more. So you said that you typically like to see about 10% of the power from the market, and so based on our 2025 sources, the market would be 22%. That's what the BP contract falling off. But then when you add in a power purchase agreement for Blue Creek Wind, which is 5%, in future solar, we're getting closer to that 10%
Yeah,
from the market.
Yeah, so 2025, we'd be a little bit above the 10%, so that's why we would actually go out in the pool and buy some seasonal power to get that number a little lower, that project there.
You know what those seasonal pools run? Like, for the rates?
I'd say usually most of the power we're buying is during summer months, so that's about 5 or 6 cents or $50 or $60 a megawatt hour. That's usually the most expensive time of the year. What the concern, Mayor?
Well, I mean, I'm just doing the math in my head, and obviously with BP being 36.75, I mean, there's gonna be some rate adjustments for our
Right.
customers.
Yeah, we'll
And
see
I'm
that at the
assuming
end there, we'll see what your.
We can't get back into
overall
BP, right? Or at least at that cost. Just catching up. I'm just.
Yeah, we are gonna see a little higher, overall power cost just due to that BP expiring there.
I do remember how excited we were when we got that contract.
All right, so that takes care of, as I mentioned, about 70% of our costs are gonna be through the energy side. So then, the next two pieces are transmission and installed capacity. So talked about PJM. So PJM originally stood for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland. So originally when that group was formed, those utilities in that area went together and said, hey, if you got a cheaper generator than I do, we'll run yours and back our down, we'll split the cost. So they jointly dispatched their systems, and then in the 90s when deregulation occurred, PJM expanded and started to be the grid operator for all of Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia, and even up to ComEd in Chicago there. So, so anybody can use all the PJM lines to deliver the power, but the price you pay for that transmission is based on the zone that you're connected to. So as I mentioned, Bryan, way back, we built a line, it was 138,000 line to AEP. That gave us early access to the grid way back in, I don't know exactly when that was built, but probably the 80s or so. Back then AEP, was the first one to allow municipal customers to have access to the grid. So that was a benefit, and they were a cheaper transmission system back then as well. So since then, they've become one of the more expensive transmission zones. So they're actually, if you're connected to AEP, you're paying a little more for transmission than you are from the other members that are in Williams County that are connected to First Energy's zone. So the way AEP and everybody, all the utilities basically set their transmission rates, it's similar to what you guys do with your power cost adjustment, only they do it on a yearly basis. So each year they calculate, here's our O&M cost, here's our depreciation, here's a lot of it actually is taxes, property taxes, and then they also have about a 10% rate of return on their investments. And so you can see that most of the utilities, sold off all their generation. They're a wires company nowadays, and so the way they make their money is they keep building more transmission, taking that 10% rate of return and increasing their transmission rate every year. So you'll notice, from 2015, we were at $4.77 per kilowatt per month. Now we're up to $11.40. So the cost of transmission has almost tripled in the last 10 years there. So every year, that number is going to change based on their cost of building their transmission system. So we expect that number to keep increasing as they continue to invest in both their transmission system. And you also, a lot of times in the news, you'll see that their distribution rates are going up. Well, Bryan controls its distribution system, so when AEP's or First Energy increases their distribution cost, that goes to all the other customers, but we don't, bear that cost. We only bear the transmission side, and their customers see that increase as well. So once that dollars per kilowatt per month rate is set, $11 right now. The way they determine what your kilowatt amount is that you're going to pay for that is they look at their single peak hour for the year. Whenever anybody is using it that hour, that's how much you're charged for the upcoming year. So we call that the coincident peak, or the 1C peak. So right now we're in 2024. We're looking at the top one, and makes it a little more complicated is their actual year goes from November through October. So the 2024 transmission bill is based on the AEP's peak load, which was on December 23rd at 6 o'clock in the evening there. If you remember, back then they called it Winter Storm Elliott. That's when temperatures went from 40 degrees in the morning of the 23rd down to like -7 degrees by the time we woke up on Christmas Eve there. So AEP's peak for the entire year was on that evening there. And luckily for Bryan, a lot of your industrial customers were shut down for the Christmas holiday. So you can see our load was only 24 megawatts during that hour. So even though your peak was 36 megawatts for the year, we're only paying for 24 megawatts of transmission by luck of the one date and time there. So 24,000 kW times $11 per kW per month times 12. So you're paying about $3.3 million a year for transmission. So when we get to next year, in 2025, we're going to be looking at the 2024 peak, which usually for Bryan, your load's lower in the winter. So this year's peak was on January 17th at 9 a.m. And so the load was 30.355. So still 6 megawatts lower than your summer peak. So next year, your transmission cost will be up $4.1 million. So, but
That's an annual?
yes, per year, yes. So the advantage that we have is PJM allows you to, when they look at your load, they actually look at your meter rather than your load. So we run the power plant, the auglades, we hope the solar is generating at the time of the peak, and that reduces the meter. And by being in the pool, the OMEG pool, as I mentioned, we can actually run the meter negative, and that'll offset. So Washington has a 30 megawatt load, and you're pushing out 12 megawatts. Those net together, and AEP bills us for 18 megawatts, but we charge Washington at 30, and we give you guys the credit for that 12 megawatts you're pushing out. So during the summer, the power plant can generate about 30 megawatts, but during the winter, when we have that nice cold air, those gas turbines can really crank up. And so you see in 2024, during that December 23rd peak, we were generating 42 megawatts. So we multiply that by that transmission rate, and the power plant saved us $5.7 million. So our bill was $3.1 million, but by running the plant negative, we were actually getting a negative cost of transmission, $5.7 million.
One quick
So,
question.
sure.
That power plant was run on natural gas.
Yeah.
And we had a storage contract in place.
Yeah. So Bob we give him credit for making sure that, one of the challenges when we hit these winter peaks is that's the coldest day of the year. So everybody else wants that natural gas as well. So last year, the first year we did it. So we had a storage contract. We were able to put gas in storage, pull that out when we needed it, because we know we were going to need it on that coldest day of the year. And the power plant was able to keep running.
Just to add, in the natural gas marketplace, that capacity is PGM grows in the forecast, that natural gas is becoming more critical on a peak day because there's more demand than normal because of the electric generation. So with having a storage contract in place, Bryan was able to save 5.7. Without that storage contract, those savings would be zero.
Keep Bob's paddling back.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, so looking at 2025, so once again, kind of lucky that AEP, set a winter peak. So once again, we were generating 43 megawatts. Auglades in this case was generating 2.4 this year, compared to only 0.2. The solar is the only one that takes a hit in the winter there, but so times that higher transmission rate. So this year we've saved $6.2 million for next year's power bill from running that power plant on that January 17th day. So it doesn't mean, if you're familiar with the plant, it doesn't mean we only run it 1 hour a year, because there's a lot of days that are close to being the peak. So we work closely with the power plant and say, tomorrow could be a peak, so you better run, whether it's summer between 2 and 6 or, the winter between 7 and 10 o'clock, just to make sure we do hit the peak there. So you can see the importance of that number there. So we stay conservative sometimes and, run it just to make sure that if it does happen to be the peak day for the year that we are operating. So so this what this chart shows you is the white bar is at, $3 million and $4 million divided by your load. So if you didn't have the power plant, your power cost would be, in 2024 or your transmission rate would be about $16, $17, $18 a megawatt hour up to that white bar. And next year you'd be looking at about $25 a megawatt hour. But because we ran the power plant and we generated more savings than our load, we're actually reducing our cost by negative $14 this year, and then negative $9 next year since the load was a little higher there. And then 2026 was, I guess we played a little conservative. We always assume we're only going to hit a summer peak, so we're only getting expected $30 a megawatt hour instead of the 40 or 30 megawatts instead of 42. Okay, so that's the first good news. So the second thing is, install capacity. So, as I mentioned, PJM has to make sure that there's enough generation out there. There needs, whether it's a peak day or whether it's, emergency like Winter Storm Elliott, there was enough generation, but PJM didn't anticipate that high load, so a lot of generation wasn't started up in time, so that kind of contributed to their emergency at that point. And so what they do, the way they acquire installed capacity, they take offers from all the generators, say, what's it going to take? What do I got to pay you to, be on call? Like Prairie State and Fremont, like, well, we're going to be running anyway, so just pay us whatever the clearing price is. There might be new generators that say, if I get paid this much, I'm going to, continue building my generator. Other generators might say, if I don't get enough revenue from the installed capacity, I'm going to retire. So I need this much to stick around. So they stack all those offers up until they get to that point, that last megawatt that meets their peak plus their reserves, and that sets the price. So PJM just ran an auction here in July, a month ago, to set the price for the June 2025 through May 2026, what they call the planning year. And they hadn't run an auction for a year or two as they were monkeying around with the rules, but when the auction cleared, we found out that, well, one, there's new load, all these new data centers coming on, so the load is actually finally increasing after, a decade of flat loads. And nobody's building any new generation, and we had a number of retirements. So all of a sudden, the competition for that installed capacity got a lot tighter, and the price rose about almost 10 times higher than what we are paying this year. So we have another auction in December 24. So the value of your generators was always there for transmission. Now all of a sudden, we have a big value of owning that generation to provide the installed capacity for the city as well. So looking at here, this is what the auction cleared at. So you see, historically, it was in about, if you go back to AEP, their transmission is $11 a kilowatt. So installed capacity is not quite that high, but historically it's been in the $4 range. But the last 3 years, you see $1.52, $1.04, 90 cents a kilowatt. So PJM enjoyed a nice, healthy reserve margin when, last time they ran this auction almost 3 years ago. And now you'll see what the auction cleared at, $8.21 per kilowatt. Everybody expected an increase, but not quite that much. So now, the new models that everybody's trying to predict what the future holds, everybody's predicting this is the new normal. That's always been a new term there. So we're going to see, everybody's, experts are predicting we're going to stay in that $6 to $8 range going forward. So once PJM then sets that installed capacity dollars per kW, in this case the kW that you're paying is based on PJM's 5 highest peaks. Those are always in the summer. So you see right now the top line from June 23rd through May of 24. Last year the average was 34 megawatts. This year we're paying for 32 megawatts of capacity. So next year we're still computing the numbers, but we're going to be in that 32 megawatt range there. And so the downside of the summer peaks is that, as I mentioned, the power plant can't produce as much in the summer. So if you look at the top line, last year we had the last 5th CP, the 5th highest peak PJM. We missed that one, we missed forecasted, so we didn't run the power plant on July 5th. And so overall we averaged 24.3 megawatts for over the 5 CPs. But then if you look at the next bottom, so rate only being 90 cents a kW month, we only saved $391,000 this year. Now, our bill was a lot lower, so, you know, it was still about the same as what we were paying, but the value, if you just look at the straight value of the power plant, it's not that high. Then if you go down to this year, you'll see that we ran the power plant, all 5 of the PJM peaks, so we averaged 30.1 megawatts. Oglaze, as I was telling Derek, Jim Caressel at the plant, he did a good job of, you know, pooling the water, making sure we were generating, you know, between the 4 and 6 p.m. peak. So we averaged 2.4 megawatts of Oglaze output, even though it was a pretty dry summer. And now that you multiply that by that $8.21 that we're avoiding paying PGM, we saved $4 million in installed capacity charges as well for the power plant. So almost $6 million in transmission savings and another $4 million in installed capacity. Well, once again, if you look at the white and red bars, so the white being your installed capacity bill without any generation, and red being with the power plant, as well as the Fremont and Prairie State credits that we get. So next year, starting in June, we'll have a negative $6 installed capacity bill instead of a $25 positive bill. So if you live in Stryker and you're a First Energy customer, you're going to be, your installed capacity charge is going to be $25. Versus if you live in Bryan, you're going to be 3 cents cheaper at negative 6. So the last portion of your bill, and just the AMP charges, just a reminder about how AMP is run. So we're nonprofit. Basically, we have service fees that we charge our members to run the company. So dispatch center runs the, we have a 24-hour dispatch center that we coordinate all the scheduling, and we also have to pay for metering. And then service fee A is based on your retail sales from the previous year. That's 22 cents a megawatt hour. And then service fee B is based on your purchases from AMP at 58 cents. So your Oglaze and your Bryan Solar doesn't pay service fee B there. So this year, with the low installed capacity charge that we saw, or low transmission rate, and then the big savings that we produced, we actually have almost a record low power bill this year at $44 a megawatt hour. Our budget, you can see historically, we've been around the $60 a megawatt hour. So as we get to next year, as the mayor mentioned, we're going to see a little higher energy cost with that BP, expiring, and that's going to the market. But then we have, offset transmission and capacity. So we're still going to be below historical levels at, $51 a megawatt hour. So that's 5.1 cents, but higher than this year, when we had extraordinarily low rates. And then in the future, that's, it's misleading chart there because the blue is low from those negatives from the capacity transmission. So this is sort of worst case, if we hit the summer peak and we're only generating about 2/3 of our transmission. So that's why we have $80 in the budget for the future years there. So that's really depending. If we run the power plant like we had the last 2 years, then we should be back to that $60 level there. So we'll still see, a gradual increase unless we get lucky with another AEP winter peak again. But the 51, is pretty solid for next year. And so this just gives you an idea of this year's cost. So the red is our forecast, for that $44 a megawatt hour. You can see how it varies throughout the year. It goes up a little bit in the fall when we have less usage, so we have less megawatt hours to spread our cost over. And then the blue is the actual, so we've been doing pretty well. We had with the mild start to the January, March, and April, we didn't quite sell as many megawatt hours as we forecasted, so that caused our effective rate to be a little higher. And then you'll notice the last 2 years where the price were. And then in 2022, you can see a couple things. One is October, November, we got some transmission refunds from AEP. We discovered they had overbilled us back in 21, so we got those in October, November. Then December, when we had the real high cost due to that Winter Storm Elliott, the power plant was making not only saving transmission money, but we made money in the market, so that drove that cost down below $30 for that month. So if we look at it in the retail rates of the city, so the way this works is we have a, service charge, so it's $14 for, every customer, fixed rate. Then we have the energy charge of 10.03 cents per kilowatt hour. And then on top of that, there's a power cost adjustment for, and so that, the power cost adjustment is, takes care of, if our power costs go up or down, that goes into the power cost adjustment, as well as takes care of the fuel that the power plant spends for the month. So that is recalculated every month. Right now, for the next bill that goes out anyways, I think it's going to be negative 1 cent or so, 1.2 cents. So I just said, if it's zero, an average customer of 1,000 kilowatt hours is going to pay 12.1 cents kilowatt hour, residential customer for their power. I guess that'd be inside the city, a little higher than outside the city. So you compare that 12.1 cents to Toledo Edison customer. So Toledo Edison, First Energy, they've sold all their generation. And so the way they acquire their power, they have to go out for an auction. They have to buy all their power from the market. So their base rate is 10.4 cents. So that covers transmission and distribution. So when First Energy's transmission rate goes up, that 10.4 goes up. And on top of that, then their power supply cost is what they acquire in the auctions. So in 23-24, they had to buy that power when we had the high market, so they paid 10.1 cents. Right now, their last auction for last year, they're paying 7.4 cents. So if you take the 10.4 to 7.4, Toledo Edison customers paying 17.8 cents a kilowatt hour for their power. And if you go down to ADP, a little south there, similar situation, they're paying 18.4 cents. So, good news for Bryan customers. And we expect, so even with that point, so if the power cost goes up by $7 per megawatt hour, that's 0.7 cents. That would flow through the power cost adjustment. And that takes us to the end of the presentation period. Yes, Bob?
Quick question. One of my favorite things to put together forecasting rates and formulas and gas supply, whatever, is the fact that there are wild cards. And the wild cards is the political environment. If Trump gets elected, things will change, I think, in all the numbers here that you're discussing. If Kamala wins the election, things will probably be similar to what you have in your forecast here. Do you see how much of this do you guys plan in your forecast?
I guess I don't really try to do a political forecast, I guess.
I mean, but it does have it.
Yeah, that's why we leave some of the power in the market, because, if one side gets in,
Yeah.
Maybe fossil fuel's a little more favored versus the other side.
Right.
Fossil fuel
I
might
mean,
get,
Trump's-
the market might get a little tighter. so-
Trump's position is drill,
Yeah, right, yeah.
drill, baby, drill.
Right,
That's going to change a big time.
yeah. Going back to your, retirement portfolio, same thing, if the one side causes, economic problems, the other side maybe looks better for economics, you want to, keep your portfolio diverse to account for either one of those situations. So that's the same thing, we try to lock in, have some hydro, have some renewable in our portfolio. We have some coal that, maybe today we wouldn't build a coal plant, nobody else would build one, but, we have that, so, but we don't really try to forecast either direction. We just make sure that we have a diverse supply so we can take advantage of or withstand any changes that might come around.
Always weigh wild cards.
Yeah.
Mike, I got two questions.
All right.
Number one, we're 21% in the BP and the remaining
Yeah.
requirements. Where do we go from there? Or what are we looking at to replace that?
Yeah, so that's what we're looking at. In 25, we're looking at that wind power. So that'd be 5%. And then 26, we're hoping to start another solar, so that'd be another 6% or so. And then between those two, we'd either buy on the hourly market backed up by the power plant, or we would buy some seasonal purchases, whether it's summer or winter, to take that percentage down as well there. So at the present time, we're not looking to lock in any other long-term, like BP type arrangements out there that
Right.
we're not seeing any good deals at the moment there. And that might come about in November, might, market might change, so we might be able to find something cheap back at that point.
And on the transmission side, obviously it's trending up, right?
Yeah.
Where do you see that going in 10 years? I mean, where do you obviously it's slowly going up.
Yeah.
It's not going to come down.
Right, it's not gonna come down, we don't see it come down. The only thing, you would think that sooner or later they wouldn't be able to fund anything else to build.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll level off as we get into the future. But, everybody's, if you look at, when AEP puts out their stockholder reports and everything, they point to is the next 5 years, we're gonna grow our transmission and distribution system by, 5% per year or something, so.
Yeah.
They're not, in the short term, they're not planning on slowing down their investment increases there. But sooner or later, yeah, they replaced everything.
Oh, yeah.
I think they would have to level up, but I don't see any reason why anything would cause it to come down, other than just level up.
I think what you're saying is, if you had the answer, we'd be rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If politics causes to trend towards fossil fuel,
Okay.
I mean, we were in that spot, what, 7 years ago? What do you think that'll cause as far as the investments? And will that stop the investments in the renewables, you're thinking, and trend towards like coal-fired and fossil fuel?
I don't really see anybody building any more coal plants, I guess. The natural gas plants kind of slowed down. I think wind and solar are still good, they continue to get cheaper. People are still gonna, the big concern out there is that they want to shut down the fossil fuel too quick before there's enough replacement to replace them. So that's the point that everybody's worried about is, putting in rules that are gonna shut down a lot of coal or gas plants before anything else is out there to replace them there. So I don't really see a bunch of new coal plants for sure, and gas plants. I guess this new installed capacity rate was, the reason PJM tries to look out 3 years in advance. They're putting a signal out there, hey, we're short. So if you want to, now it's a good time to build because you're going to get $8.21 for your investment there. So.
Well, it seems like a lot of the investments in wind turbines. Seems like a lot of the investment's been made. I mean, not just around here. I mean, because I've seen that, down around Van Wert.
Yeah, we're not seeing a
And
lot
that's
of
big, but I know we've traveled out west and going through like Nebraska and South Dakota. My God, they've got wind farms out there that make this look like unbelievable.
Yeah, pretty much everything new is solar nowadays. There's not a whole lot of wind investment. Some of that is due to the fact that there's only so much transmission to get Nebraska and Iowa wind into the eastern part of the country where all the load is there. So, I'd say the majority of the new generation's all solar. You talk about batteries a lot, but battery really doesn't produce any energy.
No.
It's just, so it's there, for emergencies, and it's there, like in California, when we have too much solar in the middle of the day, the batteries run, and then they supply when the sun's going down there. So as an energy resource, if we looked at your pie chart, if you put a battery in, you would still zero energy, but it's going to be there during the transmission and capacity peak. So we are looking at possible some batteries as more of a peak shaving type with your power, to go along with power plant or solar.
But those batteries take, what is it, lithium?
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of lithium just to build one battery?
Yeah.
Is that right? And isn't there a lithium plant, battery plant being built somewhere?
I think James built yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I can't remember where it was at.
They convert one of their plants to
Really?
build batteries.
Yeah, Lithuania, yeah. It's somewhere. I remember seeing it in the news.
And getting back to our generation, I mean, I'm sure you've all heard me say, back in the day, when AEP tried to buy our generation, we bought. this community is so fortunate for a small community that we have our own generation. We're capable of generating our own electricity in an emergency. But the amount of money that we save, peak shaving, and don't ever get rid of the generation, ever. That's gonna be an asset that you wanna keep forever.
And make sure you.
Am I right, Mike?
Yeah, right, yeah.
And make sure you back it up.
Oh, yeah. We gotta take care of it, too.
You gotta back it up.
We did that not too long ago. We
Yes.
spent a lot of money
Yes.
to
1.8 million.
get it up
And at
to.
first,
Yeah,
that number was a shock.
yeah, it was.
Then when you understand and realize, we paid for that in a couple of years. We got our money back.
And it
First
saved,
year.
yeah, got
That's-
our money back and more
Correct.
without
year.
changing the rates.
Yep.
Yep,
First year.
without going in debt.
Because if we didn't have it, and if the previous board members had not invested in some of the stuff they've invested in,
Mhm.
could you imagine what the rates would be here? There would be a million Bryan. So we're pretty blessed to have what we have. Yeah, good presentation, Mike. You might,
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Mike?
All right, thanks for the time there. Go ahead. Go over.
It was worth it.
Thanks
It's
for looking up
okay.
there.
Thank
See you
you.
next
Thanks,
month.
Mike.
I guess we don't mind them and head back to Columbus here.
Have a safe trip.
Yeah, see
All right, see you
It's
later.
fine.
Be
Good night,
careful
thank
going
you.
back, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Russ, did you absorb and get all that? Did that make sense to you?
Can we go over that one more time?
No.
Papers are great tonight.
It's a very complex, very, very complex.
I think I said the same thing when I'm like, why is Mike here? And then I was like,
You just don't know.
It's a very complex thing. Thank God Derek's on top of it.
Left me with a lot more questions, but I know we just didn't have time, and we can talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have the same type of questions I do too, but next up on the agenda is a resolution to authorize, prepare, and submit an application for participation in OPWC State Improvement Programs and to execute contracts as required. Derek?
Yeah, so this is a request for a water line replacement project on East Mulberry Street. Do you want to read first? Or do you want to read it?
I'll read it after you explain
Okay.
it, that's fine.
So it's on East Mulberry Street. The project's estimated at $550,000. It's located between Union Street and Lewis Avenue. We're still determining the exact scope of the project. The request will be for $275,000. We would expect notification in December of 2024, and if awarded, agreements in July of 2025. The actual construction would either be in the fall of '25 or during the 2026 construction season. This request does follow passage of Bryan City Council Resolution 31/2024, and it does require the approval of the Board of Public Affairs. So I would respectfully request the mayor be authorized to submit an application to Ohio Public Works Commission.
We have received a resolution to pass or reject. Any questions?
Here, and I better assign a number and read it. Okay?
Please do.
That's resolution number 18, 2024, authorizing the mayor to submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or Local Transportation Improvement Program and to execute contracts as required.
Any questions?
I'm all for saving money.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Dick?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes.
Up next on the agenda is a resolution to authorize the employee annual premium rate for health insurance. John, would you number and read, please?
Yes, resolution number 19, 2024, a resolution to set the employee annual premium rate for health insurance for the period September 1, 2024 through August 31, 2025, and declaring an emergency. Let's see, 6 or 8 weeks ago, the city received a renewal proposal from Medical Mutual for the upcoming health insurance plan year. That rate, that increase came in at 14.9%. In years past, we've been able to go back and ask them to
Tweak it?
tweak it and that kind of thing, and we've had some good success with that. But this year, because of really kind of a really heavy claims year, there was not that kind of room to go back and renegotiate. The biggest part of the increase fell on the stop-loss insurance, which really bears the brunt of high claims. So we did shop the market. We went out to other private insurers. We even looked at a couple of municipal-style pools. And we were either rejected outright or were given quotes that were higher than what MMO was quoting. So in order to try and attain some kind of a savings off that 14.9%, we started looking at some changes in the coverage. And so we had asked MMO to quote us on various scenarios, and the one that came back that we elected to consider dropped that increase to about 13%, pretty modest, from 14.9 to 13, but it helped a little. That translates to helping the employees a little. So what we're talking about here, this resolution itself defines the employee's share of the premium cost. And the 13% that the city realizes is passed along directly to the employees. So, you know, the numbers in the resolution represent a 13% increase over what they're paying in the current year. Employees, and maybe all of you, we tend to prefer to see those numbers on a per pay basis. The resolution is a per month basis, so I can tell you that for single coverage, they're currently paying $38.74 per pay. That'll go up to $43.78, about a $5 increase. For family coverage, we're currently paying $105.99 per pay. That'll go up to $119.78. About a $14 per pay increase. Those numbers translate to the monthly numbers that are in the resolution. And again, they represent a 13% increase over current. The changes in the plan itself I wanted to describe briefly. They're not many and they're fairly modest, but we currently have deductibles of $394 for a single annual and $788 for a family. Those are the annual deductible caps. Those will be increasing to $500 for single and $1,000 for family. Pretty modest. The maximum out-of-pocket levels, they just about double. They go from $519 per year single and $1,038 family to $1,000 and $2,000. It's not nothing. Employees will feel that for sure, but it's well within what's normal out in the market. Certainly on the private sector, and there's still attractive numbers within the public sector as well. So. You know, we wanted to do something. We wanted to, even if it was something symbolic, we wanted to make some effort to bring that 14.9 down and at the same time have a modest impact on the employees. And I think that's what we've achieved. The city council approved the same resolution or similar resolution last night, and we would ask the
John,
board to
quick
consider
question.
the same.
Of the numbers, how many are single versus family?
Yeah, we have about 90 family and 25, 28 singles. So vast majority of our employees have the family benefit.
John, I noticed when I first seen that in my packet, when we got it Friday, I seen the 13% number, I'm like, oh, shit. Because, we're used to,
Because one year we got a -2.
yes.
Yeah. I know.
Used to see it
Last year
less.
was about 6%.
Yeah, I was gonna say single
So-
digits.
I assumed that there was a lot more claims, so you went above your
That's what drives it.
stop loss.
Yeah, that's what drives it.
And with that, I got to thinking, are our employees and the city employees taking advantage of the clinic?
We encourage that. We do. And I can tell you, personally, the addition of Tricia has been extremely helpful. We actually just had a bunch of series of meetings with employees. We partnered with Guardian, and there's some other things the employees can pay for, extended life insurance, disability, short-term and long-term. So we brought all of them in for an open enrollment period. Tricia led those meetings. She, John, Pat, and honestly Mike and Lana from First Insurance were really helpful in this renegotiation process. For me too, because there was a lot to absorb when that first quote came in. But yes, we are encouraging that, and I think we'll probably have another source of meetings with our employees as these deductibles rise a little
Great
bit for
idea.
them. Just explaining too the blood work. I mean, if you go to a primary care physician and they order blood work, you can still go to Everside, which is changing to Marathon. They've sold again, but still same care, still same doctors and nurse practitioners. And that is at no cost to the employees. And I think they're up to 75 prescriptions that they have that are no cost to employees. So there are some huge benefits to our employees to push that way. We're going to continue to have those conversations internally. And I think too, the onboarding process for new employees, that's really, really explained to them during that enrollment period now.
How big is our pool?
What do you mean?
Number of people that we,
What 30?
So 120, 130 employees, that translates to about 350, 375 covered lives.
So does use of the clinic, is it obviously for the benefit of the employees, but I mean, does it have any effect on the rates?
Somewhat, but not exactly. So the interesting part about when we started with Everside, we've actually had the same rates. They've never increased them in that contract, which has been helpful. Medical Mutual's aware that we have this clinic, but again, the large claims, I don't think were necessarily anything the clinic could have avoided or prevented, given what they were.
The bigger
Without going into
benefit would be
HIPAA.
to the employees, and of course, when you raise your deductibles and out of pocket, there's a subtle encouragement to use
Well,
Everside.
correct.
I know at the council meeting last night, you mentioned that there were some substantial claims, I guess, over the
Yeah.
last year, so I assume that had an effect on it, so if we have a good year this year,
Well, we can hope that the rates, we won't see a 14% increase. But I will also say overall, if you look at any insurance, we have 5 cars personally on our insurance, and those rates have increased. Just the market itself is pretty volatile right now, but we knew going in that it wasn't going to be a great number. I actually thought it would be higher, to be honest, based on claims that I knew about, so which aren't as many as what he would know about.
what's, the employees, do they know this? Obviously, they see.
We've had
the
these
paper.
conversations,
And
yes.
their feedback is that, obviously, they're not pleased, but.
Well, I
this
think
is the
we've
reality
explained
of
it
the world
enough.
we live in.
And I think too, we as a team really went through and compared local other municipalities throughout the area, so we know where we sit. So we're able to provide those to the ones that have questioned, like, hey, why is this, nobody's happy that they're gonna take $14 out of their paycheck, a pay period. But also understanding too, with the deductible raise, that actually won't be realized till January 1. So we were able to negotiate where they aren't gonna have to start a new deductible from September 1 to December 1 on that high increase, so we're
So
able
it's
to.
calendar.
Yeah. Well, the $14 will start coming out at this next pay, but the deductible won't change for them until January 1. So to be honest, and I guess it'd be better to ask Tricia, and maybe you have, but because of all the meetings we had with the other things that we're now offering them to be able to take and deduct out of their pay, we haven't had very many negative
There hasn't been
interactions
negative
with that.
feedback. If she's heard anything, it's been from folks who were similar to what the mayor said. They're kind of surprised it wasn't higher. And I think our workforce, I think they do, I think a lot of them recognize that our numbers are very favorable compared to what's in the private sector.
Sure, I mean, they could shop and leave.
Maybe that'll encourage more of the employees to take advantage of the clinic.
Yeah.
Take a little bit of the sting out of the $14 increase.
Yep.
The other thing we did outside of the, what this resolution addresses, but to the benefit of the employees, in addition to all those voluntary services that are now available, we did take the vision and dental and elevate dependents up to age 26 to match the health insurance plan. They had still been operating under, 21, 22, unless you're a college student and you had to send in verification if your kids were going to Bowling Green and
About
things
3
like that.
times.
So now it's just
Yeah.
nice and clean, that they're good till 20, they're covered till 26 if you choose to. So,
Which that's actually something the city pays for.
It is.
That's a benefit.
very modest increase, and it made sense to do it.
So they've realized some additional benefits that kind of, I think, offset the shock of the $14 on the funeral coverage increase.
And again, the higher deductible should encourage them to utilize that clinic a little more, or maybe think about it,
Yeah.
at
And
least.
I don't have the numbers of your staff, but we have seen an increase in the city side employees
So I have a question.
using that.
One last thing, because it goes back to this voluntary stuff, the level of voluntary life insurance that employees can now purchase that they couldn't 3 weeks ago, and at an attractive rate and at a high level of insurance, that in itself, we had, Tricia told me the numbers this morning, we might have had 25 people that paid for supplemental life for an extra $10,000 of life insurance prior to this. We have nearly 100 signed up for supplemental life under this new plan. And my point being that the employees have been really positive, the response has been overwhelmingly positive, and I think has offset even the numbers
Bad
we
news.
talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, because honestly, they were offered a pretty good deal where if they enrolled now, I mean, it was last week, they didn't have to go through any medical screening for that additional life either. So that was a one-time offer through the group, and they were very excited about that. And I think there was an additional caveat that if you increased yours, if you had dependents, they got additional coverage as well. That was not anything we offered before. So I think we've tried to make a comprehensive package for all of them. And I don't know, Derek, have you heard anything from your staff? So far, so good. I mean, it's hard. I remember the last time we had a big increase. I think the biggest one was 2008 from my recollection, and that was hard. The employees thought we were just charging them money that we shouldn't charge, but the truth is this is group insurance and it's unavoidable, and we really tried to negotiate as
It seems like about every
effective
year
as
though,
we
this
can.
time, you grit your teeth and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So do you guys offer like a health savings account?
We do not, and we looked at those numbers, and to be honest, with a lot of our wages, it didn't make a lot of sense. Those numbers were pretty high on, what was it, 8,000?
Yeah, I mean, the out-of-pocket expenses become, they're obviously high,
Right.
but the challenge with an HSA is who provides that seed money. So, the $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 that get put into the account, it takes a long time for an employee on their own to build that up. So a lot of times an employer starting up an HSA, they'll provide that seed money in year one, and that's kind of a hurdle from the city's standpoint to overcome. And then the other thing is, I think the experience and what some of our reps were probably telling us was that, the partition, if you offer that as an alternate plan, participation rate is pretty low. Not a lot sign up for it. So we just chose not to even get into it at this point. Not that we wouldn't visit it at some point in the future, but
Yeah.
we didn't this year.
So yes, like you were saying, we're hoping that our employees take the wellness program that we offer, stay up to date on their health as best as we can help encourage them to do that. So we do try to avoid these long-term high claims and hope for better results next year.
Quick question, John. Just something that popped into my head with the life insurance. Is that for the employee only, or if they're on a family plan?
If they're on a family plan, it can include everyone.
Oh, it
That's their
does?
choice.
Oh.
I mean, there's a
At
rate
different
change.
levels, but they can get up to, say without that medical questionnaire kind of a thing, they can get up to 200,000 for themselves,
Whoa.
50,000 for a spouse, and I believe either 5 or 10 for a dependent.
That's a good deal. Okay.
All at their cost.
Yeah.
No city cost involved, but good pricing and super clean way of breaking to it.
Oh, yeah.
And a payroll deduction, so they don't have to worry about mailing that every month, so. All voluntary on their end, it wasn't anything we forced them to do, but other than making them go to a computer and sign in, because they did have to enroll for their insurance, their medical insurance.
Great. Any other questions? None? Motion to pass the resolution?
I'll second.
Bob?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
And Jim?
Yes.
Up next is to affect the semi-monthly disbursements. Motion to pay the bills.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Dick?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes.
Okay. Comments from BPA and staff? Bob, would you please start?
Great meeting. Again, I'm a strong believer in looking at long-term solutions to, on the power supply for our customers. And I think some options that we have presented to us tonight, something that we can consider. And tomorrow morning, dress warm, because we might break a record low on August 20th. That's all I have.
Dick?
I know. That was a very nice presentation Mike gave. I know that's always so damn confusing, but once you absorb it, you kind of see what direction things are going. So, yeah, other than that, life's good.
Jim?
Yeah, likewise, it was a good presentation. If you pay close attention, it makes it easier to understand.
Annette?
I have nothing more to add to that. State presentation.
I agree. It was a good presentation. And appreciate him taking the time to come up and explain that. Gives us a lot to think about and plan on for the near future anyway. Gary?
I don't have anything else to add.
Here? No, thank you. John?
Nothing.
Your next meeting, I know Labor Day is coming up. Are you guys still planning it for September 3rd?
Yes.
Okay, thank
She took
you. Sorry.
Okay, that's good. All right. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I will make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
Annette?
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes.